Good morning. My name is Angelina Carlson. This morning, I'm joined by Mateo Chang. So for a little bit of background, Mateo is an MBA consultant and a branding and business specialist. In the MBA world, he walks students through their application journey and prepares them for the final stretch of the process, the MBA interview. He has a full and free online interview prep course available for all MBA hopefuls on his website, www.mateochang.com/MBA prep. On the branding and business strategy side, Mateo helps companies either make their transition into the digital market or to improve their online connections and conversations with their clients. His firm also includes client services such as web app development, content production, and marketing setup. Currently, he is on the board of advisors of two mid-sized companies and is nearing the launch of two of his own startups. Welcome, Mateo.
Hi, Angelina. Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone watching. How is everyone doing? That's definitely a pleasure to be here with you all today.
Yes, I'm delighted to have you join. I had crossed paths, I believe because of your online presence, speaking about legacy and how that question about legacy is now coming up with MBA interviews and so on and so forth. And then we had connected and you're all the way in Brazil.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And you go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. I'm in São Paulo, Brazil now, but I'm usually back and forth back and forth in the U.S. and Brazil. So depends on where my business or businesses take me.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And you've also had your own podcast in Portuguese, as well as your own YouTube channel. Would you like to start there, and we'll kind of talk about a couple of different topics today.
Sure. Yeah. So a while back, it feels like so long ago. Yeah, I do have like an online prep course and YouTube and podcast show. I haven't done that for a few years just because life happens and we
And
have to
COVID
prioritize.
happened, and
Well, yeah, it's actually not even more, it was more about just having to prioritize opportunities.
okay.
uh, so I have like English versions of some shows and then Portuguese versions of different focuses. But yeah, I mean, it was always a pleasure to be able to distribute content, to give out tips and just try to help people looking for it. And it was a great way to connect with people that I wouldn't have otherwise met. I mean, it's the convention, the digital version of a convention, or one of those events that you would go to network. And yeah, it's been a blessing. It's opened many doors for me. So it's definitely something that anyone can do, and if possible, should.
Yeah. So you grew up in LA and you know how to speak three languages. So will you break the ice there regarding kind of where you started? And then I'll jump into some of the questions that I've written down that are legacy related.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, well, okay, so I was born in São Paulo, Brazil. So my nationality is Brazilian. I grew up in LA, California, most of my life. My parents are South Koreans. My first name is more common in Italian in Italy. My last name is much more common in China, and I'm a Japanese food addict. So just to start there, I've already started. Yeah, just a blender of cultures and emotions and things, which is great. I think it's good because of my desire. When I was young, I had always wanted to find my identity and figure out who I was. I don't think I still figured it out, but the journey of of discovering new things, not only about myself, but about what I can bring and impact um, to the people that I interact with, it's gratifying.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I like that you don't take yourself too seriously in
not
that
at
on
all.
yeah, on your Instagram page you're jumping out of airplanes and skydiving and dancing and rapping and just enjoying life to the fullest, just pure happiness. And that's just magnetic.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just trying to keep it. I don't, it's I the both my businesses, which are focused on consulting, are extremely intellectual and also stressful at times. Very serious. We're talking about, in NBA admissions, we're talking about a candidate's future.
Absolutely.
In Yeah, and in business and branding strategy, we're talking about a company's successful future. So yeah, I mean, when we're there, you have to take it seriously. But anywhere outside of those two areas, then I want to make sure that I'm living life as excitingly and as fun as, self-gratifying way possible. I mean, just enjoy it.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy it. I mean, if you don't enjoy it, then why are we doing this?
Absolutely. There are times to take the tie and make it all, formalized. And then there's other moments where you just have to laugh and enjoy life, because that's why we're here. And we're here for just a blink of an eye and then it's done.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. So, so you've shared about the languages that you speak. So one of the things that I also thought was very interesting about your background is that you teach English as a second language. So is that common in Brazil, that Brazilians will need to improve their spoken and written English in order to attend American universities? Or fill me in from your perspective.
Yeah, actually, I began my career when I came back to Brazil in the year 2000. Um, I began by teaching English, ESL, to, children, university students, and even executives. And it was in that executive side where I started to realize that I had a certain knack for helping executives kind of sneak their way through a professional interview.
Okay.
And over the many years that I helped them understand what the companies were looking for, and kind of, I mean, I just
To
figured
guide
out it's
them.
yeah, I mean, I just figured out that you can cheat an interview.
Okay.
It's a broken system, I think. You
So
can
tell me about this, because this is
Yeah,
so what, did you get the Cliff Notes? Or I don't know if there's Cliff Notes in
yeah.
Brazil. It's
Well,
the,
let's just say that you can
figure out the questions they're going to ask.
not just figure out the questions they're going to ask, but you can paint a picture of yourself in 40 minutes,
Mhm.
um, and just basically kind of, how do you say, not I wouldn't say trick the interview, but sort of hack the system, find different ways that you can kind of get through. And I actually took up a bet one time against an executive student of mine. He was like, all right, I want to see if you can get past in my current company's interview process. I'm going to ask them to interview you, and I did, even though I did not have the qualifications that they were looking for, or the resume, and whatnot. And he found it interesting because I said, most of the times you are still dealing with people. You're talking to a person, and the lasting impression that's going to stay is not actually what was on your resume. It's the gut feeling that that person has about you on the way back, because that's what will ultimately become the driving force behind him or her ending your case ahead of the decision makers. No, I think this guy's gonna be a great team player. And then, so these are the things
Interesting.
that, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
do you think, and this is, we're going off script here, which is great.
I know,
So
totally.
yeah, so do you think that's telling them what they want to hear, or do you think that is understanding the core values of the company, or is it just reading the interviewer that moment?
All of the above.
Interesting.
Yeah, all of the above. It's a mix of things. I mean, it's just interaction with people, being a cool cat, right? Being nice, just being
Okay.
genuine,
Okay.
but being able to answer things in manners that allows the person to get a sense of who you are, even if you are just talking about some sort of impact that you can have, or an impact that you had on your previous project. So there are many things like, okay, so
So that's like a shortcut. So, because I wouldn't call that cheating, I would call it like you're like understanding, you know, what is really needed compared to like, but what words would you give it?
I call it kind of, hustling your way in, just
Okay.
kind of making sure you can, and it's just in the end, this is doing the best you can. But let me give you an example.
But you're
So a
but you're
lot of
right. People are people.
people are people.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
never master people until we have to. But please go ahead.
Yeah. So just to give you an example, a lot of times, either adcom, admissions interviewers, or even professional interviewers, they'll ask you something like, yeah, is there anything you want to, you want to ask me? And one of the greatest questions when you can use this, in a school setting, for example, if you're talking to an alumnus, the best
Mhm.
question ever is just asking them, what do you miss the most?
Is that
And it's the biggest difference is it's the same exact question as asking, yeah, so what did you like the most? But it's really hard, it's really different, because when you ask what you like the most,
okay?
the person just kind of, yeah, I liked everything about it. You get a generic answer. But when you say, what do you miss the most? You force that person to select one of the moments that really stood out for him or her.
Okay.
And in that trigger word, that emotional trigger actually causes the person to kind of reminisce. Anytime you're in a situation, you're interacting, you have that person reminisce about you subconsciously,
Okay.
it kind of puts you in that memory.
Interesting. And we are
Mm.
emotional creatures. People buy
E-
emotionally.
exactly. this
Yeah.
was this was this was not, I mean, there's no scientific study about this. There's nothing, this is just tested on a day-to-day basis, trial and error. But have you ever noticed when you're talking to somebody and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I just feel like I've known you forever?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
usually, yes, usually right before there was some sort of emotional trigger moment, that was going on in the conversation. And that's something that you could actually use to really do well on a date.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I know sales, when they mentioned when you just mentioned a moment ago about, like, whether you walk up to somebody at a bar, and it's the same thing as in business settings.
Mhm,
Yeah,
exactly.
because people are people, which is
Yeah.
interesting because they say everything we should have learned, we learned in recess. But
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So when in a professional setting, depending on the position that you're interviewing for with the interviewer, a question that you can kind of shape the same style in is, if you're talking to them, I would just say something like, well, I have a curiosity. What do you miss the most from when you were in the same process that I'm going through interviewing for companies,
Yeah.
and then that's it. Then you got them, because they're gonna be like, oh, I remember, there's a struggle, and right there, what you do is you force an empathic connection,
Yeah.
and then yeah, so it's kind of cheating the system in a way.
Well, I think it goes to that statement, and I've mentioned it before on this video series about, and I think it's John C. Maxwell, and I always kind of butcher the quote a bit, but it's people don't necessarily care what you know until they know that you care. So I think by
Hmm.
asking that question, it shows that that candidate is not just curious, but they care.
Hmm. Hmm. And nine
Yeah.
times out of ten, when that HR person is, in the decision making process with other HR members, and they're looking at all the candidates, you're gonna end up standing out. And usually, it's that 8% that you stand out that really brings it down to, hey, we have like three people who are really good candidates. Which one of these three would be the best? Definitely the person that interviewed you will defend you being the her selection, his or her selection.
Because there's an emotional bonding moment right then and there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And you've worked also with some pretty big name schools, MIT, Harvard, Columbia, Stanford,
Stanford,
etc.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
which we'll get to in a moment. So do you think they also are exuding a certain energy of, would you say, confidence or authenticity, or would you call it relatability?
The schools, you mean?
No, no, no.
Or
When a candidate goes in there and they're sending out a vibe that, like, you can trust me, or I'm a
yes.
good team player. What would you call the
Yeah,
vibe? Like confident, authentic, relatable?
depends on the school.
Okay.
And then again, that also depends on like the candidate's profile. So usually most admissions school admissions offices, what they'll do is when they select their candidates to interview, they'll take it upon themselves to really understand the application, the journey that the students been through,
Okay.
and there select the questions that are best suited for that candidate. Most of the top schools do that.
Okay.
So a lot of the Harvard and Stanford questions are very specific to each candidate, and they differ from candidate to candidate.
Oh, I
So it's
didn't
the
know that.
candidates. Yeah, they're very different. I mean, it's different from like, okay, so if you take Kellogg, who interviews everybody in an MBA setting,
Okay.
they'll go through the core questions, and then they'll have maybe one or two considerations that they'd like to understand a little bit more about them. But if it's MIT, Harvard, Stanford, any of the top 3, top 4 schools, they're going to be much more candidate specific. So it's much more about self-awareness for those schools,
Oh,
which,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
that's the key word, is self-awareness, self-knowledge and self-awareness. They're going to go,
Which,
they would
yeah,
go deep. They're going to dig deep into like,
psyche.
why you
Yeah.
made a specific decision on a specific project, not to understand the results, but to understand how your mind processes
Yeah.
information, critical thinking, critical decision making, and also what you took out of it as a person, as a professional, what kind of insights that it
Mhm.
brought to you. So yeah, very cool
Interesting.
stuff.
I just want to share this because I just thought of this right now. When I was first in LA, this was been over 20 years ago. I had a temp assignment for a little while at Pepperdine University and their executive MBA program. And there was the gentleman at that time, Christopher Montoya. He would interview executives all day long. And one of the quick key questions that he would ask is, okay, you're about to lay off, 400 people at the factory in Mexico or wherever it is. What do you think that moment? And he was either looking for an answer that was emotional, like, oh, it hit me in my heart. And I had a hard time when I went home that night eating my dinner and falling asleep because I thought about the futures of those families and who would be affected. And then the other type of executive would answer with a quantitative answer where there was like no emotion. And what
Yeah.
I and what I found interesting is Pepperdine University wanted the emotional answer. They wanted to hear that it wasn't just a number on a balance sheet or a spreadsheet.
Mhm. I mean, okay, so let's take into consideration that most of the big businesses, big schools, we already know robots are coming,
Yeah, which worries me, but
right?
keep going.
Robots are actually here. If you take a look at Facebook, Instagram, all of the big social medias, the social media giants and search engine giants like Google and Apple, they have very miniature sized robots in place. Their algorithms,
Hmm.
their it's just their artificial intelligence systems all built into their software. They're already making these calculations, this quantitative work, just kind of putting a number on everything and understanding through those calculations what uh, how they can predict your marketing behavior, and
Oh,
so to
interesting.
speak. So I mean, it's definitely natural for schools to look towards something, what will keep us humane, what will keep us, you know
Because there
I
needs to be a
mean,
balance.
there needs, oh, I mean, there needs to be a balance, but I think the focus will be that. So what differentiates us from a machine that can do the same job 20 times better?
Right.
Well, it's that human aspect. It's like, all right, we're able to stop and think about, is it, how will that affect the people around us, and be able to create different solutions that a self-thinking robot could not.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if a robot can think about the ripple effect. If I
Yeah.
make this decision, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that'd be like a semantic network, what the chain reactions forming after a decision that a robot has made. I mean, that time will come though. I mean, artificial intelligence will exponentially improve, within the next 20, 30 years, I think. But
yeah. And it's interesting because I know that artificial intelligence right now, with all those algorithms, can decide which resumes are the most interesting. I'm not on the job market, but I hear about it from
mhm,
people who are friends and associates and so forth. And I find that to be very interesting because what if they choose the wrong word on their resume? Or what if they don't choose the right SEO, search engine optimization keyword that would,
yeah,
would be the buzz or would be the word that will be the open door?
right, right. But then again, and then you take a look at this professional market. A lot of the companies that use these types of systems, to analyze a CV and end up filtering out sometimes the wrong people. Maybe the right people were not selected because of the algorithm, just like you said.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one of the biggest problems in companies right now is talent retention. A lot of people are not wanting to stay in companies just because they want to work for a company that wants to have a positive impact on people. The new generations are like that. They're not going to stick
Yeah.
around a company who's just looking at numbers all day. So
Right. Interesting. Those are
yeah.
some very good insights. All right. Well,
All right,
speaking
thank you.
about human generosity and positive impact, you decided to give your MBA course away for free. So tell me about
Yes.
this. What what
Oh,
ma- what was the catalyst for this decision?
yeah, it's not as altruistic as you might think. Actually,
Okay.
I created the online course, initially planning to charge for an online course, which I actually did for the first 2 years. You could purchase the online course package, and then you'd get an hour of practice, one-on-one practice with me through Skype at the time.
Okay. Okay.
Zoom hadn't entered the scene yet.
So this was in the year.
This was about 5 years ago, I think.
Okay. Okay.
6 or 7 years ago. Yeah, about 7 years ago.
Okay.
Uh, and then at the end of the second year, I realized, I was like, okay, so I didn't notice any big difference in like change of income. I'm still doing the one-on-one classes, which I realized that I most enjoy doing is the one-on-ones, this human interaction. And then I also noticed, okay, so in that second year, about 3 or 4 students had come and asked me, like, do you have any free options, just so I can get a few tips.
Hmm.
And I realized, all right, okay, so what if I just throw this out there for free? Because information, it will become a commodity at one point. I'll let people know. I mean, if a student doesn't need to practice, he's good enough to watch the videos, take down the notes, and set up his own story using the methods that I teach, then more power to him. And then if a student needs practice, then I'll just charge for the practice and not for the course. And
Okay.
so I set it out there for free, and just hoping that it helps people. Maybe people who don't even have, it's funny because the MBA consulting world is very premium based. About 3% of all applicants worldwide can afford premium consulting services.
Yeah. It's a very niched market.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's and it's not a cheap way, but they do. But I get a feeling that obviously the consulting students, they get an advantage because they know what the schools are looking for. Whereas a student who doesn't have the money or the means to be able to hire premium consulting services, they're kind of left on their own to figure it out on the way. And
Yeah.
I've seen students who are really good, who really deserved it,
Okay.
not make it, mainly because either something was off in their essays, and they answered it not incorrectly, but not in a manner that the school was looking for.
Yeah. I
And
call those
it's
blind
just,
spots. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and this, in the same way, I've seen students who I looked at and I was like, no way is X school gonna, I mean, totally off the average. The only thing this kid had going for him was kind of like his last name. And I was like, there's no way he's getting into this school. He got in. And I was like,
Okay.
okay.
Did he have
So
relatives that also attended? Is that what you mean by the last name or?
no, let's just say he had a strong last name. There's a globally known last name. So
Okay. But no family members that were alumni.
no family members that were alumni.
Okay. Okay.
But he had a prominent name, like
Okay.
family name.
Okay.
So for me, it was pretty sure that it was kind of like school wanted that network.
Yeah. And they are
Yeah,
building networks because they also have their own self-interest.
exactly. So fine. I mean, who am I to judge, right? I mean, like,
Right. Right.
let them
Yeah.
do their thing. It's kind of like if I gave out free consulting to somebody I thought that would be able to help me out with some, I had some sort of mutual interest in, you know, so.
Yeah. And I think that it's really good also that you offer that practice, because I think a lot of the times people don't know how they come across. I think the term
Mhm.
is executive presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of catchy phrases there. I'm just, in the end, I'm always just kind of like, yeah, you got to be yourself,
Right. Right.
but be likable. And then
Right.
here's how we take you and become likable, you know. And one of the things here, I'm going to tell you another story too. The very first time I decided to create this online course, and I realized, I mean, these, students need to understand what it is that they need to have in order to do well. I remember there was a student who was like this top engineer, one of the top engineers at a top university. He got like, what was his GMAT score? It was an absurd number. It was like
It was pretty
seven.
high.
Yeah, it was high. I think it was high. It was high. It was one of the highest. He actually got an interview invite from the top four schools
Okay.
when he applied. He was one of the first ones to get accepted for an invitation to, to get their invitations to interview. Um, brilliant guy. He was designing engines and for private jets and stuff. But then I sat down for the practice, and it was just like I was talking to a wall, right?
Because he hadn't developed his social skills, or
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it was just very monotonous tone, no emotion there. I mean, like, and it was really hard to connect.
was he
I was
boring?
very. I mean, more than boring, I would just say it was really hard to connect with them. I was having a
Okay.
hard time. Like, I was like, okay, and it was just very static. And I was like, all right, this is bad.
So you got to
He's
bring the human out.
You got to bring the human out. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially for the MBA interviews. Not as much for professional interviews, but you have to be able to show, like, teamwork, collaborations. More and more companies are looking towards people who have people skills,
Yeah.
which is getting harder and harder nowadays because of the virtual world we all tend to live in. you
Yeah.
know you, you can be sitting at a dinner table with six friends, and all seven of you are on their phones, which is, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
which is fine. I don't look at that and condemn it. I think it's just a different way we can interact socially. You know,
Yeah. And
yeah, it's just different.
I think a part of
Yeah.
it is also, until somebody comes face to face with the need for those soft skills, they don't realize how valuable they are. Let me give you an example. Let's say in a crisis situation, it doesn't even have to be a big crisis, but it could be, sometimes dealing with different personalities. I use the metaphor, it's like herding cats. And that's
Hmm.
when the social skills and the soft skills are of the utmost priority, because
Hmm.
you want all these people to be able to work together. And yet, if there's infighting, because one ego gets, out of sorts, and someone else thinks this, and you have to smooth all those feathers, get everyone on the same page, the same vision, the same mission, moving forward again. That's, you know, that's a skill all in and of itself, regarding people skills, like what motivates them, how do you communicate, what are the best questions.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's just say, okay, in a crisis situation, it's very rarely you're gonna have time to go into your WhatsApp group and explain to everyone on your team through WhatsApp, and people are gonna be looking, they're gonna be running for the doors, they're gonna try to figure things out. So yeah, people skills are extremely important, which is kind of like going against the tide of where society is. You get people who, like, they have difficult time, talking to somebody face to face.
They do. It's
Yeah,
uncomfortable
so
for them because it's unfamiliar.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, lack of practice, and I totally get it. There's so many introverts in the world, and it's great, but you have to find a way to communicate, which is the most important thing. And that's kind of how we go through a lot of the exercise, and a lot of the things that we do is, all right, let's figure out how to communicate first, then the rest will come along.
Yeah.
um, when I was doing this interview practice with this, engineering genius, that's what I realized. I was like, this guy's not getting in. He in fact not get into any of the schools,
Okay.
which was a shame, because it's just a, brilliant guy.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, all right, no, it's time to teach. Let's put this up and teach students that they can do they don't necessarily have to have the best scores,
Yeah.
but if they understand what they can bring to the table and what they need from the table, then schools just might see the potential and accept them. So
Yeah. I was just going to make a joke for a moment. And that student was Steve Jobs, but bump. In other words,
yeah,
it's not a mark of failure on their life if they don't get into an MBA program, because maybe their entrepreneurial, endeavors might open other doors. So I just wanted to throw that
yeah,
out there. Yeah. Cause I think a lot of the times, like, and I'm going to touch upon this in a moment, it's like the emotions that can come up with, did the school accept, my application or not, which really translates to, did they accept me or not? And it becomes so personal.
yeah. It tends to become personal, but I mean, it's one of those things too. I mean, it's kind of what I told him. If you are a pretty much a modern day genius in the sense that your brain just works at a different level. Um, it might be that the school also thought that there's not much else we can teach this guy.
Oh, and
Maybe
adding value.
maybe he's good enough to kind of make it on his own,
Right.
without having to need an MBA, for his future goals. Maybe they're just not aligned. There's so many things that could go wrong, but yeah, it's hard for them to take it personally. It's really tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because they worked so hard.
Yeah. One year
Yeah.
of sacrifice of studying hard, getting through proficiency tests, then getting the recommendation letters out there, and then the essays where you have to dig deep into your soul and figure out how to answer these very abstract questions and in a limited word count, right? Yeah, it's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of work for getting a rejection. But some students, it stopped them from pursuing an MBA dream. Other students, I had a student of mine, on her third year she got in. She only applied to one school every year. She wanted to get into Chicago Booth.
Okay.
She applied, she didn't get in. She reapplied, didn't get in. She reapplied a third time. Well, she reapplied a second time, but her third time she applied and she finally got in. And I was like, yeah, it all depends. Some people take
Yeah.
rejection. People take rejection in different ways.
Right. Either it makes them more determined or it could break their willpower. Yeah. And I'm sure the school loved the fact that she was perseverant.
Yeah. Or they were just like, come on, just give her a seat already. She's not gonna stop, man. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think, here's a question I'd like to throw out. Do you think that these schools are preparing the students well enough these days, given the landscape that they're going to walk out on? And I know you're speaking more specifically to a master's program, which is an MBA, a master's in business administration, compared to an undergraduate degree, which might be more generalized.
Mhm. Yeah, for MBAs, I think they're doing the best they can because of these programs. The size of these programs are much smaller. You
Okay.
consider a smaller speedboat. They're able to change directions very quickly depending on
Uh,
what's trending in the market, what's
okay.
really necessary, and it also depends on like what direction the students want to go after their MBAs. Um, for undergrad though, I don't know. I've recently been looking at a lot of the undergrad programs, students coming out of the undergrad programs, and it's just like they walk out of with the college degree, not really knowing how to do much of anything,
Yeah.
so it depends on the industry too. I mean, okay, sure, you can go out, get out of undergrad thinking, all right, I'm going to start as a trainee in a financial firm, financial company or an investment bank, and then I'll work my way up and just be a career guy. That's
Right.
fine. But what about the other ones that are like who want to be entrepreneurs? They don't teach entrepreneurship in college.
I know.
It's like
That's,
they don't,
yeah.
yeah, you can't teach it. Actually, it's really hard to teach entrepreneurship. It's just kind of get out there and get hit
Yeah.
and learn to how to jingle, right, to move with the music that's coming at you.
Dance in the
uh
moment. Yeah.
Dance in the moment. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's different, but then again, like just basic business concepts, even administration students, business students coming out of business schools, undergrads, you know it's one thing to have the theory, it's another thing to actually run your own business. So it's tough
Yes.
to say.
Real
Yeah,
entrepreneurs. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Um, but I think there's always room for improvement. You know, I really
Yeah.
like the MBA format, but again, if you look at the success of the students that come out of an MBA, is really, you have to kind of check like, okay, so how much of that was that student's ability to really capture the moment, and how much of that was like the help from the career services centers of the MBA schools, which are amazing. I mean, you have a team of people literally looking for the perfect position for you. And if I were to do an MBA, that's exactly what I'm paying for. It's like, all right, the tuition, the education is great. The networking is going. You're going to make some amazing friends. We're going to be in high places in the near future. But that tuition money is going to that team whose
Yeah.
sole job throughout those 2 years on a program is to find you a position that you are going to love and that really fits with you, right? And that's, for me, I mean, some of the best schools that have the best career services centers end up having the best professional alumni.
And I think that guidance matters, like in terms of the
Hmm.
structure and the framework. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, I think mentors are huge also.
Hmm.
And I think that guidance of, well, we think this position would be ideal and you'd add value to this position. And it's an all around win-win. And they might have never known unless there was a team in the background that was looking out for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
You know,
yeah, again, and it goes back to self-awareness. The student has to know if that position is indeed something that he's going to really want. What are some of the obstacles that he is going to face? If he doesn't know himself well, the career services center, as much as they're almost miracle workers, they can't help you if you don't know exactly what you want. You might end up in a
yeah,
job that you're, miserable in. But
right.
yeah,
But hopefully
so
that won't happen. Yeah. Yeah.
most of the
So,
times it doesn't. Yeah, most of the
yeah.
times they get it right.
So let's touch upon legacy. So I was pleasantly surprised that this word is coming up in MBA interviews. So,
Yeah.
for a little quick background, I had this idea about a decade ago of where are the coaches and advisors coaching on the topic of legacy? And I looked out into the marketplace and I was like, oh, look, they're really not there. They're few and far between. And so I'm pleasantly surprised a decade later, it's now coming up in what I might call the collective consciousness. So, why would schools care? Or please share your thoughts.
Well, okay. So the first time I heard the legacy question was, I think, in 2017. And the student came to me after the interview and he asked me, he's like, yo, Matt, how do I answer this question? What is my legacy? And for me, it comes down to the basic question. Because what I mean, if you think about something, if you ask anyone on the street, yo, what's your legacy? They're gonna be like, what?
Yes,
It's
yes, I've
really
been
hard.
there.
Yeah, it's really hard to process that word legacy, because
Right,
anytime you have that, they're thinking about, I'm not some sort of Greek god or a hero. What do you mean legacy, right?
right,
Not a
because they're doing
legend.
day-to-day survival, even if they're doing well. Yes.
Yeah. So the easiest way to actually answer this question is to kind of transform it into what they're actually looking for. And the underlying question is actually, what do you want to be remembered for?
Yes. Yes.
You
Yes.
know, and that's it. What is your legacy? My legacy is that, I want to help. I want to help 1 billion people build their businesses through my business entrepreneurship platform. For example, that would be an answer for a student looking to create his or her own platform. That would be their legacy, is how they want to be remembered. You know, and then it makes it so much easier. They're like,
Which,
oh,
yeah, which goes to that word that you had used before, self-awareness.
yep.
Yeah. The other thing, and I've mentioned this before in this legacy series, the element of self-worth also comes into play. It's, can I be remembered well? I thought I was just supposed to take whatever was dished out at me, or, whatever their influences were, how they were treated by their family growing up. I think a lot of that comes up, maybe more so for women than for men, but I still think there is an element of that self-worth conversation that happens internally in their landscape.
Yeah, it's very generational. I mean, most different generations grew up with different ways that their parents interacted with them. Some generations, and some, not on just generations, but you break it down into like regions and social classes. For some students who always grew up thinking like that they were never going to be how do you say, that they were never good enough, it's really hard for them to answer this type of questions. It's like, what do you mean? I never even thought I would get through college, let alone now I'm going for an MBA. And that's exactly it. It's finding,
Yeah.
yeah,
It raises
a
the
lot.
ceiling of possibilities.
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Yeah, of what
does.
can become real. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, self-awareness, self-worth. I mean, if you take a look at the entire application process, it's just a big test of resilience, one big test of resilience.
Okay.
What they're doing is filtering out the students that are able to go through that grueling process of the applications, and then if you actually get to the interview portion, then
Right.
these are the students that they're looking for, the students that are going to go through 2 years crunching it, just really crushing it, and then maybe even taking on debt, and then being able to get out of there and become successful and do something even greater in their lives. So it's like an army boot camp, if you think about it, the
That's what
way
I
that
was,
it's
yeah, that's
built.
what
Yeah.
I was going to comment on real quick, that my husband was a pilot and then he trained pilots, and most pilots don't make it through that pilot school. And I'm not even
Yeah.
talking about the landing, because you know how important the landing is.
Yeah, that's the most important part, I think, than taking on. Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes, a lot of it comes down to mindset.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that statistically, most pilots have an optimistic mindset as a pattern throughout the industry, because
Mm.
they have to land that airplane.
Yeah, they have to believe in the machinery. Yeah.
Yeah. And that they can do it if they have to lift up out of a valley, or whatever is the landscape or the environment. So I find that fascinating, that it's really a test of resilience.
It is.
Interesting.
As much of life or business, it's very rare that you see a business succeed their first or second year,
Oh,
operating.
yeah.
It's very rare. And I'm not talking about those businesses that, that start off with like a $10 million offering of their first round of investments. And then, yeah, we made it. No, you actually didn't. You only make it
Okay.
when you're actually making that money, right? Or even a small store, they rarely make. It's just really like, okay, how tough can you hang on there?
I know.
And yeah, and then the rewards usually come after. And that's just the same as in an MBA setting or in a career path. It's a grueling process for you to get up into a supervisor position, management position.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people like easy. Yeah, it's very easy to become what I call
Oh yeah.
addicted to comfort,
Oh
unless
yeah.
you're self-driven to excel and want more, or you're so driven by a vision that you're willing to overcome the critter comforts of, well, if they don't like me, or what if I look bad, or what if they see that I failed the first year or this and the second year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
tough. It's definitely, it's just human nature. We want the easy way out. We want to, just chill out and do nothing and enjoy it. But I don't know. I'm not sure that's the way you actually enjoy it.
right. Because we have to
It's
grow.
hard.
Yeah,
Yeah. If
yeah,
you're not really out there changing something, impacting people, impacting the people around you, and you're living on your own, I mean, what good is that to anybody else? I mean, sit down on the couch and watch a Netflix marathon for weeks on end, just eating and, total
chips.
couch potato life. Yeah. I mean, then there's no way that you're going to look at that and be like, I'm truly happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it also, these days in 2021, it comes down to, is someone going to be in service to self or service to others? Truly.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
That actually brings me to something that I truly believe in, is that the biggest difference between humans and all of the animals in the world, I mean, the scientists will break it down saying that because we have a conscience and whatnot. I don't think it's that. It's because we have the ability to create. We are beings that are creators. We create, right? If anybody believes, whoever is really, we talked a little bit about religion. Whoever is believes in God. I believe in the Bible. They say that God created man or woman or humans in his image, and he's a creator. And I think that's the essence of it. We as humans, we are only happy when we create something out of nothing, and
yeah.
when we see it flourish.
Oh, that's
That's like,
empowering.
yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to create. If we're not creating, we're not happy. I think that's like the most basic human need is to create something.
Yeah. So let me circle back for a moment with legacy. I wonder why these MBA schools are now caring about how the candidates look at this subject. I wonder if it's because they want the candidates to have a long range view, or if they want the candidates to be in service to others as a reflection on their institution.
Yeah, it's hard to tell the agendas behind those types of questions.
Yeah.
What I do understand is this. I mean, you get these top schools who have these, let's say, Stanford, for example, has a course. It's like a very touchy feely course
Okay.
for really understanding, how to become an empathetic person, really understanding, getting self awareness. This is top one, top two schools in the world, right? And they're really into the whole emotional thing on making an impact on the world, right? Their
Mhm.
motto is like change businesses, change lives, change the world.
Which is very interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but it's
Hmm.
very interesting because a lot of MBA schools, I think, have had a higher priority. Maybe it's changed in the last few years, but higher priority in giving returns to shareholders. But maybe that's changing.
What do you mean by giving returns to share? That's the
Like,
reason why they're asking the legacy question.
no, no, no. That's a priority in the MBA school that the students have to understand that when they graduate and they are at a company, that they need to know how to deliver returns for the shareholders. It's all about the shareholders.
Yeah, I mean, most of the schools, they want faithful alumni who will contribute either financially or with their time or with their network, which is what was interesting anyway for the student in the first hand to try to get into the school. It's just kind of a
Okay.
cycle.
It's
I
a
don't
quid
think
pro
that's their
quo. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's their priority.
Okay.
Because I mean, if you think about it, these schools, they work every day on understanding to the degree of how much does a specific department impact the candidate's performance in a company 10 years down the 10 years down the line. And
Okay.
if we see that they're doing this on a daily basis, every day they're refining their questions, they're understanding students more and more and how that impacts the work area, the professional market. It's the same way, like somebody a professional soccer player who kicks, thousands of the soccer ball thousands of times a day. He gets to refine things in a manner that no normal human being could ever do. I think
Right.
that's what really sets a lot of the MBAs apart, is that they really come down to understanding on how do we filter out the type of students we want through the
Uh,
right set of questions. It's more along that line, I think. As far as like having to appeal to shareholders, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the rule of the land. So one of the startups that I advised a few years back, we were working on their exit strategy. They really wanted to open up to IPO, but their whole business was centered around having a positive impact on the end client. And I
okay.
brought that to them. I'm like, look, so we're at a crossroads here. You're either going to not open up, not go public, continue changing lives, or you're going to go public and forget about everything that you built. That legacy is gone. They're like, why would it be gone? I was like, because the moment you go public, you're not trying to make your clients happy, you're trying to make your shareholders happy. And that's when you've lost way, you've lost your way. You're no longer in that mission,
Yeah.
and they don't want to believe that. But it's the same as any other public company. If you look at their website or whatnot, you see their mission statement: we want to change lives. But you look at the numbers and you see underpaid workers with terrible working conditions, and it's just like, come on, there's only so much you can do to lie and make a front. But in the end of the day, it's all about the shareholders. And that's kind of like the way I see it, I guess. Not just,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think with the
So,
transparency from the internet, that buyers, customers, consumers have access to more data points, that if
mhm,
there is a brand and the brand is saying one thing, but
mhm.
they're doing another, now those customers can call it out, especially Generation Z is very vocal. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, I have nothing against people who own shares or,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything like that. But I just think the market's going to change. It's definitely going to change. You know, you recently we had the whole GameStop market share, just
Yeah.
to prove that this is a rigged game. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm not. For me, it's like the impact I want to make. I want to make sure that I have a hand in it and that I
Mhm.
am making the impact. So, one of the startups, I told them, like, I'll be a part of this if we don't have an exit strategy. But if you guys want to go public, then I'm out, because it's just my personal choice. Nothing, more power to those people who want those, millions and billions of numbers in their account.
It
Yeah,
shifts the control.
yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It
Yeah.
does. Like, on the legacy question, like, somebody asked me, like, well, what is your legacy? I'm like, what would be cool for me is that one day when I'm laid to rest, on that day, my sons see like these CEOs, and because I mean that's what what I'm preparing MBA students for, is like CEO roles and big entrepreneurs. And I don't know if it's going to get to the point where they're going to come to my funeral, but just the thought of, like,
They
having
will.
one or two,
They will.
hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah. I tell my sons, I'm like, you guys are going to forget me in a few years anyway. So don't, you
Until
know,
they're lonely at the top of the mountain and they're going, "Where's Mateo? I think I need him now."
yeah,
Because I'm dealing
no,
with
but,
a crisis from these customers
yeah,
posting
no, but,
online.
but, yeah, but if, for me, it's an amazing thought to be able to imagine, like, my kids are crying, but they're looking around. They're like, who are these people? Who are these huge players? I mean,
That you,
dang,
you touch their lives.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I read a joke once that I thought was hilarious, because it's something that I would definitely do just to make fun. Is like, some guy said that he thought it would be a great idea to pay like a bunch of like big bulky Italian guys to show up on his funeral day, like in black suits, and just when it's time to say their goodbyes, they come down, they touch the coffin and say, "Bye, boss,"
Oh,
and just pay them on with it.
hilarious.
And if it's crazy to think about, but I just cracked up because I think that would be so funny. Like, if my kids are watching a line of like 20 huge Italian dudes, just like slick hair and in black suits, going like, "Bye, boss, rest in peace." That's it. I'm gonna be laughing wherever I am in the afterlife. Doesn't matter. But I think that's just enough for, I think, anyway. But that's something I want to try to do, maybe.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I just want to touch upon that. I didn't know that you stay with your MBA clients for 1 year in preparing them.
Yes. Yes, we
Yeah,
do.
that's a rite of passage there.
Yes. I mean, so now for me, much less. In the beginning, I was there from the beginning to end, as from the moment that began their diagnostic tests and their proficiency test preparation. But since, like, at one point my digital consulting services kind of demanded more and more time, um, now, as far as the MBA consulting, I'm kind of more focused on the interview portion now.
Okay.
So when the students come to me, they've already gone through that long process, and they meet me at the end for the interview practice. But the overall process of it usually takes about a year or a year and a half.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
to close out this conversation, are there any good insights? I wrote down like Harvard versus MIT or Harvard versus Columbia. Are there any good insights or secrets you can share?
For secrets for some of these top schools,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be different for each profile. I think that's the most important thing, is to understand. All right, here's the greatest tip you can do to for any student who's pursuing an MBA, not sure what schools you want to go to. Don't think about, all right, I want to get into Harvard. Well, Harvard is that, it's a nice thing to have, right? It's a nice badge to have on your resume. But if you really want to understand how you fit in, and which school is the best for you, think of it as a relationship. You're going into a 2-year relationship with the person, right? What's the best way? What's the best way to see if that person is right for you, or that school is right for you? for me, the top secret is talk to 20, 30 of their alumni.
Ah, good. Yep. They're past customers. Yeah.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah.
date a girl, that I had no idea about, what's the first thing I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do recon, right? I'm gonna talk to her friends. I'm gonna be like, hey, look, yo, can I buy you some ice cream? Just want to ask you a few questions. She's like, sure. Like, yo, so tell me about your friend, right? And then
Yeah.
that's what I'm gonna do. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you should do as in any of the schools. If you want to know if MIT is right for you, talk to 20, 30 alumni. Just give it a 10, 20, 30-minute chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Open chat. In the end, you start tallying up the numbers. At one school, you're going to notice that you liked 9 out of the 10.
Mm-hmm.
And in other schools, you're going to be like, I liked one of them. The other 9 were just total buttheads,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then that's exactly it. You're not going to go to school where everyone there that you've spoken with, you disliked.
Which is great. That's very strategic because I think a lot of times people buy the marketing too quick, the image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they're miserable for 2 years.
Yeah. I have a metaphor about that. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'm not going to pick my heart surgeon or brain surgeon or whatever based on their marketing. But I know these days people, they look at the marketing and how good are you at the marketing? And I think the skill set of coaching and advisory is very different than the skill set of marketing. And they're two totally the same thing with being a surgeon. The surgeon might be very good at what they do, but to hold a conversation with them might be a complete chore. But you know what?
Yeah.
I don't need them to be charming.
No, that's totally true. That's absolutely correct. Now, yeah, what you need is actually in a surgeon scenario, what I would do is just find out how many of their patients are still alive.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But if they don't know how to dress or wear a pinstripe suit, like doesn't matter.
Does not
so I
matter.
think that's a great distinction that you're talking about, doing a little recon to not just buy like their motto, their slogan, their logo or so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got 2 more questions before we officially wrap.
Sure.
So what values do you get to honor by what you're doing today? Knowing that you are building your legacy right now, you are defining, developing, and executing, especially with 2 sons that are watching dad. And
yeah, that's, I think, the one thing that guides me is my North Star is, if my kids grew up to be the man I am today, who am I today? So that's the one thing that I'm thinking about every time that I'm making a decision is like, what kind of a decision can I make in this situation that I would like my kids to make, hopefully through emulation.
Okay.
So that's kind of what guides my moral compass now is like, what kind of men do I want them to grow to be? And that's going to be directly impacted by the kind of man I am. And it's tough because being a parent, like, okay, so my kids are 7 and 5. I'm still figuring it out as I go along. And it's just like, I'm asking like my uncle, like, hey, how'd you do it? Or asking my stepdad, how'd you do it? That's like, dude, we still don't know, man. Shut up. You're never going to know, it's just, it's an evolving thing. You're never going to know all the answers. So you just got to do your best, treat others kindly. Right. And, stop the negativity, I guess. It's just, stop the negativity, stop hurting people.
Yeah.
Or trying to defend you, it's just like, just be nice. I mean, I don't know what else to really say. I mean, because if you see like for example, the political divide today of the United States, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
But then you go into these little pockets of society, of smaller communities, like, so I'm usually in North Carolina, Chapel Hill once a year. And it's just like, you don't feel there's no impact on the political scenario that you see on Facebook, for example. On Facebook, you open it up and it's just like civil war, right?
Yeah, people are throwing shade. Yeah.
Yeah, total shade, or, you see somebody like me as an Asian, you see somebody an Asian got attacked in New York or something. But it's not something like that you feel like in smaller communities. And I've always thought about that. I was like, people are going to always say that the world is going crazy. I think that's wrong. I think people have always been crazy. We're just seeing more and more of it because so many people have their own cameras, right? We all have our own news reporter. Everyone's their own news reporter nowadays. So we tend to see more of it. But if everyone just laid down their flags a little bit, just kind of like, all right, what can I do to help them? And not what are they doing to help me?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's if
That's the
everybody thought
entitlement.
of it. Well, I mean, not just entitlement, but it's just if we all stop to think about what I could do to help the person next to me, and that other person's thinking about how they can help me, whatnot. It's just one of those. It's going to be a nice harmonious cycle of just people trying to do good unto each other.
Yeah.
But whenever we start thinking about, well, what are you doing? What's the government doing to help me?
Yeah.
What's my company that I work for doing to help me?
Yeah. 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 It
What's my
changes the
girlfriend doing?
energy.
It does.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It does. It does. Because I think deep inside we have a very bottomless pit. It cannot be satisfied. It cannot. There's nothing in this world that's gonna satisfy that desire to fill and some people will substitute that with food or drugs or some sort of an addiction.
The distractions. Yeah. To
Yeah, to
numb
try to
out.
fill that void. And it's just not possible. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You can
We
get
got
the
to do that
richest man
inner
in the
work.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the
Get the,
self-awareness. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then which is why I say, but you can pull out from that void. Why not take that hurt and try to bring it and transform it into something that allows somebody else not to hurt? And
Yeah.
that
That's
and that is also how do you say infinite. If you just keep taking
yes.
out of that void that can never be filled, you
Right.
can never stop being able to give, so to speak, in one way or another. So anyway, that's like my philosophy of life, if that was the question you were asking.
Yeah. That's
Sorry.
lovely. That's lovely. And if you were to name one value that you get to honor each day as you are defining, developing, executing your legacy, what would you say one value might
Gratitude.
be? Oh, okay.
Gratitude. Thankful,
Okay.
thankful,
Okay.
thankful, thankful. I always say one of the most things the first thing I say to my kids when I see them in the morning is thank you for today. Thank you for waking up. I mean, we don't know when our time is going to come. I don't know if I'm going to die in my bed, like I'm
Yeah.
sleeping.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
know. You don't
Yeah.
know. A
Yeah.
lot of people think that it's something that I'm going to understand when it comes, when it happens, but nobody ever expects to die. Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
so every time and this is the scariest feeling, not being able to wake up. I love sleeping, but when if you cannot wake up and you're in a different world, then it's like, damn, yeah, that was my chance to make an impact.
Yeah.
But so when I do wake up, I open my eyes, I'm just really thankful that, okay, I got another day. I got one more day to fix what I did wrong yesterday and do a little bit better today. And then I see my kids wake up in the morning. I'm just like, hey, thank you. Thank you for waking up. What a great day. I'm so happy that you woke up. I mean, think about it. It goes both ways, right? What if
Yeah.
one of my
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
goes, in the middle of the night and that's it, that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very, very filled with gratitude in the morning when I see them waking up, when I see my family up. And then for me, that just gets me going. So
Connection and
yeah,
meaning. Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Lovely.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Mateo, for sharing your thoughts about the MBA admissions process,
Thank
what
you.
these schools are looking for, and talking so deeply also about the subject of legacy, whether it's asking these candidates to dig deep regarding how they would like to be remembered, or if it's just their, pulling out their authenticity, their humanity, that they, don't have to just hide behind the good grades. They can also show up and be real, and the world needs that right now. So thank you for sharing your insights and also how to cheat an interview. Because yeah, a lot of times people think it's complicated, and it comes back down to humans. We're humans. We want to connect as humans, and that's the lovely part. So any other closing thoughts before we wrap?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank you as well for the opportunity and for reaching out. And this was really fun. This is great.
Good, good.
Yeah, and if whoever wants to reach out and say what's up to, there's my website, my email's there, or YouTube, where that's not hard. Just type in Mateo Chang on Google, and you can connect in one way or another. But thank you, Angelina. Thank you for this. And also I appreciate your efforts into spreading this idea of legacy and how we want to be remembered and how we impact other people in the world. I think we need more of that.
Thank
So
you.
good on
Thank,
you. Yeah. Thank
thank
you.
you. Okay. So on that note, please like and subscribe and share with your family and friends. And we look forward to more legacy conversations to add to this series. So thank you so much for joining.
Bye, y'all.